In a quiet Iowa barn, a rusted relic sits worth more than a brand new pickup truck. Across the country, farmers still start engines built before their grandparents were born. These aren't just machines. They're cast iron legends that survived the Dust Bowl, 2 world wars, and the rise of GPS farming. One sold over 500,000 units, another fewer than 150. From Persian orange beasts to Johnny Popper Kings, here are 30 of America's greatest vintage tractors of all time. Number 30. The Waterloo Boy Model. We start in 1918, the year a small Iowa company called the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company changed everything. The Waterloo Boy Model N was a 2-cylinder, kerosene-burning workhorse that produced around 25 horsepower at the belt. It looked more like a riveted steam-era contraption than a modern tractor, with massive lugged steel wheels, an exposed engine, and a fuel system designed to start on gasoline and then switch to cheaper kerosene once the engine was warm. But the Model N was the machine that put John Deere into the tractor business. In 1918, Deere & Company purchased the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company outright, instantly inheriting an entire tractor manufacturing operation, the Waterloo, Iowa factory, an experienced engineering team, and a proven product. That single acquisition is why every John Deere tractor on the planet today traces its bloodline back to this rough, rumbling, kerosene-drinking ancestor. The Model N's 2-cylinder layout would also become the foundation of the Johnny Popper sound that defined John Deere for the next 40 years. Production continued until 1923, when Deere replaced it with the Model D under the John Deere name. Surviving examples are now displayed at the John Deere Pavilion in Moline, Illinois, where collectors stand in reverent silence before the green grandfather of an empire. Today, original Waterloo Boy tractors are extremely rare, and any documented survivor is a museum-grade artifact worth a small fortune. This is the tractor that made everything else possible. Number 29. The Fordson Model F. Henry Ford didn't just want to put America on wheels with the Model T. He wanted to put a tractor on every farm. In 1917, the Fordson Model F entered production, and it changed the agricultural world overnight. It was the first truly mass-produced, lightweight, and affordable tractor in American history. By 1923, an astonishing 75% of all tractors purchased in the United States were Fordsons, and worldwide sales of the Model F eventually surpassed 650,000 units. Henry Ford named the company Henry Ford & Son because Ford Motor Company shareholders had refused to let him build tractors under the Ford name, so he simply built them under Fordson. The tractor used a 4-cylinder, 20-horsepower engine and was built using automotive-style mass production techniques borrowed straight from the Model T assembly line. The price was so aggressive that it triggered what historians call the tractor war of the early 1920s, forcing competitors to slash prices or die. Smaller manufacturers folded. Larger ones like International Harvester were forced to mass-produce and standardize parts to survive. Henry Ford eventually pulled out of the U.S. tractor market in 1928 due to falling profits and to focus on automobiles. But the Fordson F had already done its damage. It mechanized the American family farm, period. Today, the Fordson is one of the most historically important tractors ever built, and original Model Fs in good condition are coveted by both Ford collectors and tractor historians worldwide. Number 28. The John Deere Model D. In 1923, John Deere finally released a tractor that wore its own name on the radiator. The Model D was a heavy, 2-cylinder standard tread tractor designed primarily for plowing and belt work, and it became the longest-running tractor model in John Deere's history. Production stretched from 1923 all the way to 1953, an incredible 30-year run that spanned the Great Depression, World War II, and the post-war farming boom. The Model D introduced the world to the iconic Johnny Popper sound, that distinctive low, slow 2-cylinder Bach that became the audio signature of John Deere for the next 4 decades. Early Model Ds produced about 22 horsepower at the belt and had a 2-speed transmission, which was later upgraded to 3 speeds. The Model D's enormous flat-belt pulley made it perfect for powering threshing machines, hammer mills, and silo fillers across the American Midwest. It was honest, simple, and nearly impossible to kill. Farmers passed Model Ds down through generations, and many were still working family farms 50 years after they rolled off the line. By the time production ended in 1953, more than 160,000 had been built. Today, an unstyled Model D from the 1920s in good condition can fetch tens of thousands of dollars at auction, and they're displayed in nearly every major American agricultural museum, from Iowa to Indiana. The D is the foundation stone of John Deere's reputation for durability. Number 27. The McCormick Deering Farm, all regular. In February 1924, International Harvester shipped the first units of a strange-looking machine that would rewrite the rules of farming. The McCormick Deering Farmall, later renamed the Farmall Regular when its bigger siblings arrived, was the first commercially successful row crop tractor in history. Designed under the leadership of International Harvester's Assistant Chief Engineer, Bert R. Benjamin. It featured a tricycle configuration with closely spaced front wheels that ran between rows of corn or cotton, a high rear axle that straddled growing plants, and adjustable rear wheel spacing for different crops. Power takeoff was standard equipment, allowing it to operate cultivators, mowers, and corn pickers. International Harvester built more than 134,000 regulars between 1924 and 19. The Farmall didn't just sell well, it forced every other tractor company in America to design their own row crop machines. Without the Regular, there is no Farmall H, no Allis-Chalmers WC, no John Deere Model A. The original Farmall was so revolutionary that International Harvester's own advertising had to remind people that Farmall was specifically an International Harvester product to prevent the name from being genericized. The first regulars were painted Harvester Gray with Harvester Blue trim, the trademark red color scheme not arriving until 19. This is the ancestor of all American row crop tractors, and a properly restored Farmall Regular is now one of the most prized possessions in any vintage tractor collection. Number 26. The Allis-Chalmers Model U. In 1929, Allis-Chalmers tractor department manager Harry Merritt was traveling through California when he saw fields of bright orange poppies. He took that color back to Wisconsin and ordered every Allis-Chalmers tractor painted Persian orange. The Model U was the first tractor to wear that iconic color. But the Model U is famous for something even bigger. In 1932, Allis-Chalmers partnered with Firestone to introduce the world's first low-pressure rubber pneumatic tires on a production farm tractor fitted to the Model U. The introduction was a true public spectacle, with Allis-Chalmers staging tractor speed runs on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to demonstrate that rubber tires were not only practical, but actually superior to steel cleats. Famed race drivers Ab Jenkins and Barney Oldfield piloted Model U tractors on rubber tires at speeds approaching 65 miles per hour, generating enormous publicity. Farmers were initially skeptical. Some thought rubber tires would slip in mud or wear out too quickly, but the data was undeniable. Pneumatic tires improved tractive power and fuel economy by roughly 10 to 20%. Within just 5 years, rubber tires had displaced steel cleats on roughly half of all new tractors sold industry-wide. The Model U didn't just look pretty in orange. It put the entire industry on rubber, and that single innovation reshaped what a tractor could do, how fast it could travel between fields, and how comfortable it could be to operate. The Model U is a true founding father of modern agricultural machinery. Number 25. The John Deere Model A. April 1934, the first John Deere Model A rolled off the assembly line in Waterloo, Iowa, and Deere finally had a true row crop competitor to the Farmall. The Model A featured a 25-horsepower two-cylinder engine, a 4-speed transmission, and a revolutionary innovation, the world's first adjustable rear-wheel tread on a tractor. Farmers could now match the wheel spacing to whatever crop they were growing, from narrow rows of vegetables to wider rows of corn. In 1938, the legendary industrial designer Henry Dreyfuss styled the Model A with sleek sheet metal that gave it a modern automotive look, transforming the tractor from a piece of farm machinery into something approaching industrial art. In 1941, Deere bumped the engine displacement from 309 to 321 cubic inches, raised horsepower to 31, and added a 6-speed transmission, giving an advertised 34 horsepower at the drawbar and 38 at the belt. Production ran nearly 20 years until 1952, with more than 290,000 units built. The Model A is the tractor that launched the entire lettered series of John Deere greats, the B, the G, the H, the M, and the legendary R diesel. The Model A came in remarkable variants too, including the AO Orchard model with smooth shielding, the AI for industrial use, the AN with a single front wheel, and the AW with a wide front. With the advent of John Deere's numerical model numbering system in 1952, the Model A's lineage continued through the sixth. Number 24. The Allis-Chalmers WC. The Allis-Chalmers WC, produced from 1933 to 1948, became the best-selling tractor in Allis-Chalmers history, with roughly 178,000 units built. But its real claim to fame is much bigger than sales figures. The WC was the first farm tractor in history to come with rubber tires as standard equipment, and the first tractor ever tested on rubber at the legendary University of Nebraska tractor tests. Designed by CEA Frudden and Walter Strelo, the WC featured drop gearing at the rear, which allowed the tractor to keep row crop ground clearance while using smaller, cheaper rubber tires, an elegant cost-saving engineering trick that became influential industry-wide. By 1939, more than 90% of WCs were sold with electric starter and lights, so Allis-Chalmers executive Harry Merritt made those features standard, making the WC one of the earliest tractors to ship with starter and lights as factory equipment. The 200 cubic inch four-cylinder engine could run on gasoline, kerosene, or alcohol, with a smaller auxiliary tank used for cold starts on gasoline before switching to cheaper fuel once warm. The WC's bore and stroke were both 4 inches, making it one of the first square-bore tractor engines ever built. The WC's quick hitch system was a generational leap forward in implement attachment, simplifying what had previously been backbreaking labor. In 1934, you could buy one for $825 on rubber or $675 on steel. The WC was assembled at Allis-Chalmers' West Allis, Wisconsin plant near Milwaukee, and decades later the tractor remains one of the most beloved Persian orange icons of the pre-war era. Number 23. The Oliver 70 row crop. When the Oliver 70 debuted in 1935, the tractor world stopped and stared. While competitors were still selling 4-cylinder iron boxes with exposed radiators, Oliver introduced a smooth-running 6-cylinder high-compression engine designed to run on 70-octane gasoline, hence the model name. The 70 came with a styled grille, electric starter, and lights as options, an instrument panel, and fingertip controls. It looked more like a luxury automobile than a farm implement. Built at Oliver's plant in Charles City, Iowa, the Oliver 70 was so visually striking that it forced John Deere, International Harvester, and Allis-Chalmers to hire industrial designers and style their tractors with streamlined sheet metal. The 70 came in row crop, standard, orchard, and high clearance configurations, and farmers nicknamed it the Tiptoe Oliver because of its unique skeleton wheels, which Oliver called Power on Tiptoe. In 1937, Oliver dropped the Hot Pa name from the radiator housing entirely, signaling the company's full transition under the Oliver brand. That same year, an Oliver color voting contest was held at the company's annual picnic in Charles City, where farmers voted on 6 different paint scheme combinations. The winner was chrome green body with red trim and ivory lettering, which became the legendary Oliver paint scheme for decades to come. Production ran from 1935 to 1948, then continued under the names Oliver 77, Super 77, and 770, well into the 1960s. The Oliver 70 didn't just compete, it set the new visual standard for the American tractor. Number 22. The Farmall F20. Released in 1932 as the successor to the Farmall Regular, the F20 became one of the most beloved row crop tractors of the Great Depression. It featured a 4-cylinder kerosene engine producing around 23 belt horsepower, a 4-speed transmission, and the classic tricycle configuration with the high rear axle. It was tougher, more powerful, and more refined than the regular. International Harvester sold roughly 148,000 F20s during its production run from 1932 to 1939, making it one of the best-selling tractors of the entire 1930s and a backbone of Depression-era American agriculture. The F20 came in standard tread, narrow tread, wide tread, and orchard configurations, and could be ordered with steel wheels or, increasingly, rubber pneumatic tires by the late 90s. In 1936, International Harvester adopted its iconic bright red paint scheme, and the F20 became one of the first Farmalls to wear it. The shift from gray to red wasn't just cosmetic, it was a branding masterstroke that made every Farmall instantly recognizable across a field, and it helped cement Farmall as the dominant row crop brand in America. The F20 was also notable for its smooth-running engine, its ease of operation, and the wide variety of mounted implements that International Harvester offered specifically for it. Today, well-restored F20s are showstoppers at antique tractor events, and unrestored survivors keep turning up in old barns across the Midwest, often dragged out after sitting for decades and brought back to life by passionate collectors. Number 21. The Case Model L. The J.I. Case Company had been struggling with outdated cross-motor tractors, when in February 1929 they finally released something competitive. The Case Model L was the first Case tractor to feature an inline four-cylinder engine, a major departure from the company's older crossways-mounted engines. It was a heavy, 3-4 plow standard tread tractor capable of pulling a 4-furrow plow through hard ground. Built in Racine, Wisconsin, the Model L stayed in production for an impressive 11 years, from 1929 to 1940, with 31,678 units built. The Model L was also the basis for the Case Model C, a row crop version released later in 1929, which led to the famous Model CC, the first proper Case row crop tractor. Originally painted gray, the Model L wore Case's iconic flambeau red paint after the company switched colors in 1939. The 6.6-liter engine gave the Model L a powerful, low rumbling sound that veterans of the era still remember, and its 3-speed transmission paired with mechanical drum brakes made it a heavy-duty workhorse. It was a workhorse of the wheat belt, popular in the Great Plains and the Pacific Northwest, and one of the toughest tractors of its day. Today, the Case Model L is highly sought after by Case collectors and is widely considered one of the best traditional standard tread tractors of the pre-war era. Surviving Model Ls in factory paint are now major attractions at vintage tractor shows, and parts availability remains surprisingly good thanks to active collector clubs. Number 20. The John Deere Model B. Introduced in 1935 as the smaller sibling to the Model A, the John Deere Model B became one of the most iconic vintage tractors in American history. With its signature green and yellow paint and that unmistakable two-cylinder Johnny Popper sound, the Model B was affordable, versatile, and perfect for small to medium family farms. It produced around 16 horsepower at introduction, but later versions pushed past 27 horsepower as engine displacement was increased over the years. Production continued until 1952, with more than 300,000 Model Bs built, making it one of the best-selling John Deere tractors of all time. In 1938, Henry Dreyfuss restyled the B with the same elegant sheet metal as the A, transforming it into one of the prettiest small tractors of the era. The Model B came in numerous variants, including the BO Orchard model, the BR Standard Tread, the BN Single Front Wheel, and the BW Wide Front, giving farmers a choice for every application. The Model B was the tractor on which thousands of American farm kids first learned to drive, and the Model B's slow, popping idle is a sound deeply embedded in American rural memory. Today, when people picture a classic John Deere, they're almost always picturing a Model B. It is, without exaggeration, the quintessential vintage two-cylinder John Deere and one of the most beloved tractors ever produced. Restored Model Bs are everywhere at tractor shows, and the model has launched countless tractor collecting hobbies over the decades. Number 19. The Ford 9N. October 1939. Henry Ford and Irish engineer Harry Ferguson, joined by a famous handshake agreement, unveiled a tractor that quietly revolutionized agriculture. The Ford 9N was the first American-made production tractor to feature Harry Ferguson's three-point hitch system, a hydraulic linkage that controlled implement depth automatically through draft sensing. The three-point hitch is arguably the single most important tractor invention of the 20th century, and almost every modern tractor on Earth still uses Ferguson's basic design today. The 9N produced 23 horsepower from a four-cylinder engine, weighed only 2,340 pounds, and sold for $585 in 1939, an astonishingly low price that put a real, capable tractor within reach of the smallest American family farms. It was small, light, affordable, and shockingly capable, easily able to outperform much larger and heavier tractors thanks to the genius of Ferguson's hitch. Ford produced 99,002 units of the 9N between 1939 and 1942, when it was replaced by the wartime 2N model, which was largely identical but adapted for war-era material shortages. The original handshake agreement between Ford and Ferguson eventually fell apart spectacularly. Henry Ford II, after Henry Ford's death, broke the agreement, prompting Ferguson to sue and ultimately win a major patent settlement. Ferguson then went on to merge with Massey Harris in 1953 to form Massey Ferguson. The 9N didn't just sell tractors. It introduced an idea that would dominate global agriculture for the next 85 years. Every tractor with a three-point hitch owes the 9N a debt. Number 18. The Minneapolis-Moline UDLX Tuckford tractor. Now we get into the weird and wonderful. In 1938, Minneapolis-Moline shocked the farming world with the UDLX, Nicknamed the Comfort Tractor, it was the first farm tractor in history with a fully enclosed factory cab. And the cab had everything: a heater, a radio, an ashtray, a cigarette lighter, windshield wipers, sun visor, padded upholstered seats for two, a rear view mirror, safety glass windscreen, an electric starter, a dashboard with speedometer and clock, and a 5-speed synchro mesh transmission capable of 40 miles per hour on the road. The marketing pitch was that you could plow your fields by day and drive your wife into town for dinner by night. It was powered by a 283 cubic inch 4-cylinder engine producing 46 horsepower. Minneapolis-Moline introduced the UDLX with massive fanfare at its 1938 National Harvest Festival in Minneapolis, where 12,000 farmers came to see it in person. The body was painted in bright prairie gold, and the bumpers and hubcaps were chromed for a true automotive aesthetic. The problem was the price. The UDLX cost roughly $2,155 in 1938, almost the same price as a brand new Cadillac Series 60S sedan. By comparison, a 1938 Ford Deluxe Tudor sedan cost only $725, and a standard Minneapolis-Moline Model U cost about $1,000. Depression-era farmers, famously thrifty, refused to pay the premium. Only about 150 UDLX were ever built before production stopped in 19. Today, surviving UDLXs are considered the holy grail of tractor collecting. About 80 are believed to survive, with only 25 in roadworthy or restored condition, and a beautifully restored example can sell for 6 figures at major auctions. Number 17. The Farmall H. The Farmall H, produced from 1939 to 1953, is a legend. It was a mid-sized row crop tractor with a 4-cylinder engine producing approximately 25 horsepower, a 5-speed transmission, and the classic Farmall tricycle layout. According to International Harvester's own records, more than 420,000 Farmall H and Super H tractors were sold during its production run, making it the #2 best-selling individual tractor model of all time in North America, surpassed only by the Ford 8N. The Farmall H was also the first Farmall styled by industrial designer Raymond Loewy, the man who designed the Coca-Cola bottle, the Studebaker Avanti, the Greyhound bus, and the Air Force One livery for President John F. Kennedy. His sleek red lines made the H one of the most beautiful tractors ever built, and his design language carried over to the M, the A, and the B as well. The Farmall H was affordable, dependable, easy to maintain, and capable of nearly any task on a mid-sized farm, from planting and cultivating to mowing, baling, and hauling. The H listed for around $2,000 in 1952, comparable in price to a small new car. Generations of American farmers grew up on a Farmall H. It was the tractor on countless Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio farms, and it remains one of the most photographed and remembered tractors in American history. Today, restored examples are everywhere at tractor shows, and many H tractors are still working farms more than 75 years after they were built. Number 16. The Farmall Cub. In 1947, International Harvester released the smallest Farmall ever made, and it became one of the most beloved. The Farmall Cub was a tiny sub-10 horsepower tractor designed for small farms, market gardeners, tobacco farmers, and large estate maintenance. It featured the patented Cultivision design, where the engine was offset to the left of the operator's seat, giving the driver a perfect unobstructed view of cultivator teeth working the row, a brilliant ergonomic solution for precision row work. The Cub stayed in production with very minor changes from 1947 all the way to 1979, an incredible 32-year run, the longest production run of any Farmall model in history. The Cub's engine was a 60 cubic inch 4-cylinder gasoline, producing roughly 9 horsepower at the drawbar and 10 horsepower at the belt. Modest figures but perfect for the small acreages and light tasks the Cub was designed for. Originally painted Farmall red, later versions came in Farmall white and even Farmall yellow for industrial lowboy variants. The Cub was tough, simple, economical, and extraordinarily easy to maintain. It found its way onto truck farms, tobacco fields, and estate properties across America, and many municipal parks departments used Cubs for grounds maintenance well into the 1980s. Today, the Cub is one of the most popular small collector tractors, perfect for parade duty, garden plowing, or simply tinkering on weekends. Active Cub clubs and online forums keep the parts supply alive, and Cub prices have steadily risen as nostalgia for the lettered series Farmalls grows. Number 15. The Allis-Chalmers WD-45. In 1953, Allis-Chalmers unveiled the WD-45. the most powerful Allis-Chalmers row crop tractor of its time, and one of the most innovative tractors of the 19th. It was an evolutionary leap from the popular WD model and offered farmers something rare in 19. A smooth-running, optional 6-cylinder gasoline engine producing more than 30 drawbar horsepower. The WD-45 also offered a 6-cylinder LP gas option and, most importantly, a diesel option in 1955, which made it one of the early American row crop diesels and a rare feature for its class at the time. The WD-45 featured Allis-Chalmers' famous power director clutch, which allowed the operator to shift between high and low ranges without stopping, effectively doubling the number of working speeds. The snap coupler hitch made attaching implements quick and effortless, and power-adjust rear wheels meant farmers could change wheel spacing without dismounting and without manually wrestling heavy iron, a real luxury in the era. The 1948 introduction of Power Adjust on the predecessor WD made Allis-Chalmers the first manufacturer to offer power-adjusted rear wheels on a farm tractor, and the WD-45 carried that innovation forward. About 90,000 WD-45s were built before production ended in 19. It remains one of the most respected vintage Persian orange tractors, especially among collectors who value engineering innovation over raw nostalgia. The WD-45 also has a strong reputation for tractor pulls, with hot-rodded examples competing in vintage tractor pull classes across the country. Number 14. The Ford 8N. July 1947. Ford launched the 8N, and tractor history pivoted. The 8N replaced the wartime 2N and brought a 4-speed transmission, an improved hydraulic system with position control, more horsepower, and a fresh red and gray paint scheme that became iconic. The position control feature on the hydraulics was actually added partly to evade Ferguson's original hydraulic patent, allowing Ford to keep producing tractors after their handshake deal with Ferguson collapsed. The 8N produced about 23 to 27 horsepower from a 4-cylinder gas engine and weighed only around 2,700 pounds. It was light, nimble, affordable, and shockingly versatile. Ford sold over 530,000 Ford 8N tractors worldwide between 1947 and 1952. By many measures, the 8N became the most popular farm tractor of all time in North America, surpassing the Fordson Model F in popular acclaim and units sold in the United States. The 8N was the first Ford tractor with a clutch on the left and independent brakes on the right, giving farmers far greater control during turns. The two-tone red and gray paint scheme became one of the most recognizable color combinations in the entire history of agricultural machinery. After the Ford-Ferguson lawsuit was settled in 1952, the 8N was replaced by the all-new Ford NAA, also known as the Golden Jubilee tractor, marking Ford's 50th anniversary in business. Today, more than 75 years later, you can still find Ford 8Ns mowing pastures, grading driveways, and pulling small wagons across rural America. Parts are widely available, and the 8N remains the entry point for thousands of new vintage tractor collectors every single year. Number 13. The Oliver Super 88. The Oliver Super 88, produced from 1954 to 1958, is widely regarded as one of the most beautiful and most powerful row crop tractors of the 1950s. It featured Oliver's signature 6-cylinder engine, available in gasoline, LP gas, or diesel form, with the diesel version producing around 50 horsepower. The Super 88 had Oliver's famous power booster 2-speed underdrive transmission, giving the operator effectively 12 forward speeds, far more flexibility than competitors offered at the time. Built at Oliver's Charles City, Iowa plant, the Super 88 wore the company's iconic meadow green and clover white paint with red wheels, a color combination still adored by Oliver collectors and considered one of the most attractive paint schemes ever applied to a tractor. Production was relatively short, but the Super 88 left a lasting legacy as one of the most refined American tractors of its era. It also competed directly with the Farmall 400 and the John Deere 70, and many contemporary farm magazines considered it the best engineered of the three, particularly praising its smooth 6-cylinder power delivery in an era when most competitors still used 4-cylinder engines. The Super 88 was offered in row crop, standard, orchard, and high crop configurations, with a wide variety of attachments and implements available from Oliver and from independent manufacturers. Today, the Super 88 is a collector favorite, and pristine survivors in original meadow green paint are increasingly difficult to find. The Super 88 represents Oliver at the peak of its engineering and stylistic creativity before the company was absorbed by White Motor Corporation in Number 12. The Massey Harris 44. Massey Harris was technically a Canadian company, but its huge American manufacturing presence in Racine, Wisconsin, makes the 44 a fixture of American farming history. Released in 1947, the Massey Harris 44 was a row crop tractor that competed directly with the Farmall H and John Deere A. It featured a 4-cylinder engine producing about 35 horsepower, a 5-speed transmission, and Massey Harris's signature red paint with yellow wheels. The 44 was offered in standard, row crop, orchard, and even diesel and LP gas variants, giving farmers an unusual breadth of configuration options for the era. Production continued until 1955, with tens of thousands built and sold across North America. Massey Harris had a long history of building combines and threshing machinery dating back to its 19th century roots in Ontario, Canada, and the 44 reflected that heritage of heavy-duty design. After the 1953 Massey Harris merger with Harry Ferguson's company to form Massey Ferguson, the 44 lineage continued in new forms under the new combined brand. Today, the Massey Harris 44 is a beloved vintage tractor with a strong collector following, and surviving examples in original red paint are show circuit favorites, especially in regions with strong Massey heritage like the Upper Midwest and the Canadian border states. The 44 is also notable for being one of the early tractors offered with a factory diesel option, an innovation that previewed where the entire industry was eventually heading by the late 90s. Number 11. The John Deere Model G. If you wanted the most powerful John Deere row crop tractor of the late 1930s, you bought a Model G. Released in 1937, the Model G featured a massive 412.5 cubic inch 2-cylinder engine, producing roughly 34 belt horsepower at introduction, eventually climbing past 38 horsepower in later versions. It was bigger, heavier, and more capable than the Model A or B, designed for large acreage row crop farmers in wheat country and the Corn Belt. The Model G's enormous 2-cylinder engine made the deepest, slowest, most satisfying Johnny Popper sound of any John Deere ever built, and that sound became a kind of badge of honor among Deere loyalists. In 1942, the G was restyled with Henry Dreyfuss's smooth sheet metal and gained a 6-speed transmission and electric start, the same upgrades the A and B had received. The G became known as a wheat belt favorite and a power monster of its time, capable of pulling large plows and harvesting equipment that would overload smaller tractors. Production ran from 1937 to 1953. The Model G is also notable for being relatively rare compared to the A and B, since fewer farmers needed its size and power, and total production was far lower. Today, the Model G is highly sought after by John Deere collectors, specifically because of its size, its rarity, and that unmistakable bass note exhaust note. A well-restored Model G commands a serious premium on the auction circuit, and the deep, slow Johnny Popper sound of a G under load is one of the most satisfying sounds in tractor history. Number 10. The International Harvester Farmall 12006. In 1965, International Harvester dropped a bomb on the tractor industry. The Farmall 1206 became the first 2-wheel drive row crop tractor in the world to exceed 100 horsepower. Powered by a turbocharged 6-cylinder diesel engine producing 112 horsepower at the PTO, the 1206 was a pure brute. At a time when most row crop tractors topped out at 60 to 80 horsepower, the 1206 nearly doubled the figure, single-handedly launching the muscle tractor era and forcing every other American manufacturer to chase higher horsepower in response. It featured power steering, a torque amplifier transmission for on-the-fly gear shifts under load, hydrostatic power brakes, and that iconic Farmall red paint with white wheels. The 1206 was nicknamed the Black Stripe or Turbo by farmers due to its distinctive black hood stripe and the turbocharger badge proudly displayed on the side. International Harvester built roughly 12,500 of them between 1965 and 1967. The 1206 was followed by the equally powerful 1256 and then by the legendary 1456, but the 1206 was the original, the trailblazer. Today, the 1206 is one of the most collectible muscle tractors of the 1960s, and a clean original 1206 with documentation can sell for serious money. It is widely credited with launching the high-horsepower row crop arms race that defined American agriculture from the mid-1960s onward, and its influence on tractor design is impossible to overstate. Number 9. The Allis-Chalmers D19. In 1961, Allis-Chalmers fired its own first turbocharged shot. The D19 diesel became the first agricultural tractor in history to be equipped with a turbocharger as standard equipment. Powered by a 262 cubic inch six-cylinder diesel engine boosted by a turbo, the D19 produced roughly 67 PTO horsepower, a major figure for its time. The turbocharger allowed Allis-Chalmers to extract significantly more power from a relatively small displacement engine, an innovation that would eventually become standard across the entire diesel tractor industry. The D19 wore Persian orange and white paint, featured the famous power director clutch and the roll-shift wide front axle, and was offered in gasoline, LP gas, and diesel variants, though the turbocharged diesel remains the most historically significant version. Production ran from 1961 to 1964, with about 10,000 units built across all variants. The D19's influence is enormous, and the basic concept of using a turbocharger to boost a smaller displacement diesel engine is now fundamental to nearly every diesel tractor on Earth. Today, the D19 is recognized as a true engineering milestone, and well-preserved examples are highly valued by Allis-Chalmers collectors. The turbocharged version is particularly sought after, with documented original paint survivors fetching strong prices at major Persian orange auctions. Without the D19, the modern turbo diesel tractor would have arrived years later. This is a genuine landmark American tractor. Number 8. The Oliver 1855. By the late 1960s, Oliver was already in decline as a brand, but the company went out swinging. The Oliver 1855, produced from 1969 to 1975, was one of the most powerful and most refined row crop tractors of its era. It featured a 310 cubic inch six-cylinder Waukesha-built diesel engine, producing roughly 98 PTO horsepower, an 18-speed hydropower transmission, factory cab options, and over-engineered build quality that became legendary among farmers. The hydropower feature, which allowed the operator to shift between high and low ranges within each gear under full load, gave the 1855 an almost stepless feel in the field. The 1855 wore Oliver's classic meadow green and clover white paint scheme, and many farmers consider this paint color combination one of the most beautiful ever applied to American farm equipment. After White Motor Corporation acquired Oliver in 1960 and eventually consolidated several brands under one roof, the 1855 was also sold as the Cockshut 1855 and the Minneapolis-Moline G955, all essentially the same tractor wearing different paint and badges. Today, the Oliver 1855 is a cult favorite among collectors, prized for its bulletproof Waukesha engine, its smooth hydropower shifting, and the increasingly rare green and white paint. Many farmers consider it the finest Oliver row crop tractor ever built, and surviving original examples are hunted relentlessly at farm auctions across the Midwest. Auction prices for clean 1855s have steadily climbed in recent years as the brand's heritage is rediscovered by a new generation. Number 7. The International Harvester 4366. In the early 1970s, the high horsepower revolution went four-wheel drive. The International Harvester 4366, introduced in 1973, was an articulated four-wheel drive monster powered by a turbocharged 466 cubic inch six-cylinder diesel producing roughly 178 PTO horsepower. It featured a 10-speed transmission, dual hydraulic remotes, and that unmistakable Farmall red paint with white wheels. The 4366 was built to compete directly with the John Deere 86.3 and the Steiger four-wheel drive giants of the era, all of which were chasing the rapidly growing big acreage farm market in the Great Plains and Western Canada. With its hinge-in-the-middle articulated steering and massive flotation tires, it could pull enormous tillage tools, sometimes 60 feet wide or more, across thousands of acres of wheat country. The 4366's articulated frame allowed it to make remarkably tight turns for a tractor of its size, while its dual rear and dual front tires gave it traction that simply could not be matched by two-wheel drive designs. Production was relatively short, with the 4366 replaced by the upgraded 4386 in 1976, then the 4586, and ultimately the 4786 by 1981. Today, the 4366 is highly sought after by collectors of vintage four-wheel drive tractors, especially in the Great Plains states where these big iron beasts originally worked. A clean, low-hour 4366 in factory red is a major prize, and it represents the moment American big iron farming truly went heavy. Number 6. The Steiger Panther. When you talk about American big iron, you have to talk about Steiger. Founded in 1957 by brothers Maurice and Douglas Steiger in a North Dakota barn, the company specialized in articulated four-wheel drive monsters that dwarfed anything coming out of the big three manufacturers. The Steiger Panther series, introduced in the mid-1970s, was the company's flagship. The Panther 310 C310 used a turbocharged Cummins V8 diesel producing roughly 310 horsepower, with later versions reaching even higher figures. With 4 massive equal-sized tires and articulated steering, a Panther could pull tillage tools 60 feet wide or more through tough North Dakota wheat ground, drastically reducing the time and labor needed to work huge acreages. Steiger painted its tractors in lime green and beige in the early years, then later in their signature dark green with yellow stripes, with each model named for a powerful predator: the Wildcat, the Cougar, the Bearcat, the Panther, the Tiger, and the massive Lion. The company was based in Fargo, North Dakota, and built tractors that became famous for their tough construction, their massive scale, and their ability to thrive in the harshest conditions of the northern plains and the Canadian prairies. Steiger was eventually acquired by Tenneco, the parent company of Case, in 1986, and the Steiger name still adorns Case IH's largest articulated tractors today. Original Panthers from the 1970s are highly collectible and still respected as some of the most powerful and durable tractors ever built in America. Number 5. The John Deere 40110. Before the legendary 4020, there was the 4010. Introduced in 1960 as part of John Deere's revolutionary new generation of power launch in Dallas, Texas, the 4010 broke completely from the company's two-cylinder past. For 37 years, John Deere had built two-cylinder tractors. The Johnny Papa sound an inseparable part of the brand. The 4010 ended that overnight with a 380 cubic inch 6-cylinder diesel producing 84 PTO horsepower, plus closed-center hydraulics, power steering, hydraulic brakes, and an 8-speed synchro-range transmission. It was a complete generational leap, and it nearly bankrupted John Deere to develop. The Dallas launch event itself was one of the most expensive and theatrical product launches in agricultural history. John Deere bought out the Cotton Bowl, brought in thousands of dealers and journalists, and put on a spectacular show that introduced not just the 4010 but an entire family of new tractors, including the smaller 1010, 2010, and 3010, plus the larger 5010. The 4010 was built from 1960 to 1963, with more than 58,000 units produced. Without the 4010, there is no 4020, no 4040, and no modern John Deere. It is the single most important tractor in John Deere's modern history, the moment the company truly stepped into the post-war agricultural era. Original 4010s in factory paint are now blue-chip collectibles fetching premium prices, especially clean diesel row crop versions with original sheet metal. Number 4. The Allis Chalmers D21. In 1963, Allis Chalmers crossed a threshold no Persian orange tractor had ever crossed before. The D21 became the first Allis Chalmers tractor to exceed 100 horsepower. The original D21 used a 426 cubic inch 6-cylinder diesel producing about 103 PTO horsepower, and the 1965 turbocharged D21 Series 2 pushed roughly 127 horsepower, an absolutely brutal figure for its day, well ahead of what International Harvester's Farmall 12006 was producing at the same moment. With its Persian orange and cream paint, massive stance, and aggressive lines, the D21 looked exactly as fast as it was. The D21 used Allis Chalmers' famous Power Director feature, plus power steering, power brakes, and a 3-point hitch capable of handling the largest implements of the era. Production ran from 1963 to 1969, with only about 3,500 units built across all variants, making the D21 relatively rare today. Allis Chalmers collectors worship the D21, and it has become one of the most sought-after classic muscle tractors of the mid to late 1960s. According to longtime farm equipment auction expert Greg Peterson, the D21 has been steadily climbing in value, with restored examples regularly setting new auction records. In 2014, a restored Allis Chalmers D21 sold for $48,500 at a collector auction in southwest Iowa, setting a new record at that time. The D21 is without question the king of the orange tractors and a true blue-chip vintage muscle tractor. Number 3. John Deere 6030. Now we enter mythology. The John Deere 6030, produced from 1972 to 1977, was the largest two-wheel drive John Deere tractor ever built up to that point. Powered by a turbocharged and intercooled 531 cubic inch 6-cylinder diesel, the 6030 produced an astonishing 175 PTO horsepower, a figure that made it the most powerful two-wheel drive row crop tractor in the world at its launch. It used an 8-speed synchro-range transmission, optional dual rear wheels, and a giant operator platform that towered above ordinary row crop tractors. The 6030 was the spiritual heir to the legendary John Deere 520 of the 1960s, and it represented the absolute pinnacle of two-wheel drive engineering before the entire industry shifted decisively toward four-wheel drive articulated tractors. Less than 4,000 6030s were built during the entire production run, making it a relatively rare and highly desirable model. The 6030's enormous physical size, combined with its turbocharged power and limited production numbers, has turned it into a kind of mythical creature among John Deere collectors. According to industry expert Greg Peterson, on June 28, 2014, a fully restored 1972 John Deere 6030 sold for $64,000 at a collector auction in southwest Iowa, blowing away the previous auction record for the model. Original paint 6030s in working condition have become genuine investment-grade vintage tractors, sought after not just by John Deere loyalists, but by any serious collector of vintage American farm muscle. The 6030 is mythical metal, the apex of an era. Number 2. The Farmall M. Now we approach the throne. The Farmall M, produced from 1939 to 1954, is widely considered one of the greatest American tractors ever built. It was the largest tractor in International Harvester's iconic lettered series, with a 248 cubic inch four-cylinder engine producing approximately 36 horsepower at the belt. Industrial designer Raymond Loewy gave the M its famous streamlined look, and the bright Farmall red paint became unforgettable, the color of American agriculture itself for an entire generation. The M was the workhorse of American World War II agriculture, plowing the victory gardens, working the wartime farms while millions of young men were overseas, and feeding the troops both at home and abroad. It featured a 5-speed transmission, optional electric starter and lights, and a huge variety of mounted implements that International Harvester offered specifically for the M, from corn pickers to hay balers. Roughly 270,000 Farmall M and Super M tractors were built between 1939 and 1954. The M was also offered in diesel form starting in 1941 as the MD, an innovation that was extremely rare for a row crop tractor of its time, putting Farmall years ahead of competitors on diesel adoption in the row crop segment. The Super M, introduced in 1952, featured an enlarged 264 cubic inch engine and refined hydraulics. Today, the Farmall M is the most iconic Farmall ever built, the tractor most people picture when they hear the word Farmall. It is a permanent fixture of American agricultural culture, painted, photographed, and toy-modeled millions of times. Number 1. The John Deere 420. And here we are, the throne. The John Deere 4020, produced from 1963 to 1972, is widely considered the most influential and most iconic American tractor of the 20th century. It replaced the trailblazing 4010 and improved on it in every way. The diesel version used a 44 cubic inch 6-cylinder engine, producing roughly 91 PTO horsepower, with gasoline and LP gas variants also available, though diesel models accounted for the vast majority of production and remain the most desirable on the collector market today. The 4020 introduced the optional power shift transmission, which allowed farmers to change all 8 forward gears under full load without ever touching the clutch, a revolutionary improvement in productivity that changed what farmers could accomplish in a single day. It featured closed-center hydraulics, power steering, wet disc hydraulic brakes, an optional factory cab with heat and air conditioning, the differential lock, and an independent 540 and 1000 RPM rear PTO. The 4020 was built primarily at John Deere's Waterloo, Iowa factory, with some production also taking place in Mexico for international markets. According to John Deere production records, John Deere built approximately 184,000 4020 tractors during its 9-year run, making it one of the best-selling tractors of all time and one of the most successful single-tractor models in American agricultural history. Decades later, the 4020 is still working farms across America. Parts are everywhere, mechanics know it by heart, aftermarket suppliers stock virtually every component, and resale values stay strong year after year. The 4020 is the gold standard of American vintage tractors, the machine that defined what a modern tractor should be, and the undisputed king of this list. If this video brought back memories of your grandfather's tractor, your father's first row crop, or your own first ride in an open station with the sun in your eyes and the smell of diesel in the air, hit that like button, subscribe for more agricultural history, and share this video with the tractor lover in your family. Until next time, Keep the iron rolling